If you're fly tipping in Blaenau Gwent, then expect a visit from Andrew Long. He's the head of the council's pollution team, which has seen illegal dumping fall to a lower level here than anywhere else in Wales.
We are very proactive in policing, particularly in Blaenau Gwent. We have some of the lowest rates of fly tipping as a result. Other neighbouring authorities may have slightly higher rates of fly tipping. And I think the message does get out there to these individuals with proactive policing, with covert surveillance, with intelligence techniques that we're utilising, that, you know, if you fly tip, you will get caught.
Blaenau Gwent have led the way in using technology to spy on offenders.
This individual was subsequently prosecuted for this offence, and I believe it's about 5 or 6 bags of garden waste, and he subsequently returned to the site about 20 minutes later and deposited another 5 or 6 bags of waste.
Hopefully the footage gained using these cameras is good to be used as evidential kind of value in any potential prosecutions.
The Welsh Government has set up Fly Tipping Action Wales to work with all councils to tackle the problem. It supplies covert cameras as part of its efforts to identify fly tippers and share that information across the country.
If we use the intelligence database and information is put on that database, that can be searched, and then officers can be aware then of any individuals or vehicles to look out for. You can also produce things like intelligence bulletins, and that can be sent out to partners just to flag up that there is an issue with this particular individual or maybe a location.
The advice is to dispose of waste legally, avoid cowboys by passing it on to a registered carrier approved by Natural Resources Wales, or else we could face the fly tipping squad.
Tonight we investigate a crime which is largely without an obvious victim, but one which is committed every 15 minutes in Wales: fly tipping. Councils here spend millions of pounds every year clearing up illegally dumped waste, but the cost to the environment can be even more alarming. Now enforcement officers are closing in on fly tippers, using the latest technology and sharing intelligence to catch them in the act.
Fly tippers are opportunists, they're criminals, let's be frank about it, and they've no regard for community or the law.
They don't care a damn for their countryside, they don't care a damn for their neighbours. As long as they get rid of it, they don't care what they do.
If you're a fly tipper, there's a chance that you're being caught in the act.
This is a crime scene on a road on the Wentloop levels between Cardiff and Newport. There's plenty of evidence. Tons of asbestos sheets have been dumped in the area for the 20th time in the last 14 months. It's highly dangerous and can't be left on the roadside.
At the moment, the local council are removing it. Natural Resources Wales have become involved because of the amount of asbestos that's been deposited here lately. Well, if it's big, bad and nasty, then we will help with the investigation and sometimes even take the investigation over. So it's got to be pretty nasty and pretty big before we get involved.
So far, clearing up this asbestos has cost Newport City Council around £20,000. Specialist teams are needed because of the risk of airborne asbestos fibres from the broken roofing sheets.
Asbestos, if it breaks down, obviously the spores start travelling around in the air. And we know from previous experience that can be dangerous for public health. You have asbestosis where people have worked with it for quite a while, but it is a prolonged sort of exposure to it that can cause problems. Of course, the people who are disposing of this are probably not dealing with it correctly themselves, so they're quite likely to be at risk of all sorts of diseases.
You must ask them if they're a registered waste carrier. That's a licence that they can obtain from Natural Resources Wales that allows them to carry waste and dispose of waste legally. Ask them where they're taking your waste, and if the answers you get aren't adequate, that should raise your suspicions. And as in everything in life, if the price that they give you seems too good to be true. It probably is.
I'm in Carmarthenshire in South Wales, spending time with a group of people who are using technology to fight back against the fly tippers and the waste criminals. It's certainly a secluded spot coming in off the hills there, isn't it?
Yes, this is an ideal location for fly tippers because it's off the beaten track.
And here it is. Mike Roberts from Carmarthenshire County Council is on the front line against fly tipping, and he certainly sees more than his fair share of rubbish. Mike works with an organisation called Fly Tipping Action Wales, a collection of local authorities working with people like the police, the Forestry Commission and the NFU to clean up rural Wales. Every year, 42,000 tonnes of illegally dumped waste is reported in Wales, costing the taxpayer £2.1 million to clear up. But Mike and his team are using some pioneering technology to turn the tide.
When we arrive on site, put it in camera mode, photograph the evidence.
This tracking device records the location of waste sites, then plots a red dot on a map to show the hotspots, and South Wales appears to have a nasty rash.
The benefits of having a mapping system shows where local authorities have got to put their resources. It'll indicate the level of fly tipping, the type of waste being left and the frequency.
These cameras are ideal because they're quite small and can be easily hidden. This particular location has been subject to fly tipping in the past. So as you can see around you, there's various ways in which the cameras can be hidden so that the fly tippers don't know that they're there.
Yeah, there's no shortage of undergrowth and brush to put them in here. There we go. I have a feeling that's definitely not getting my best side if I have one. This pioneering method of mapping illegally dumped waste before catching criminals in the act is now being rolled out in other areas. Gary Evans has been managing the project. So how are you doing in protecting the beautiful landscape of Wales?
Yeah, it is beautiful, isn't it? And it's typical of South Wales, and yeah, we're passionate at Fly Tipping Action Wales of maintaining this for local communities and future generations. There were still 36,000 incidents of fly tipping in Wales last year, and that equates to about 100 every day, and that's far too many when you consider the amount of money that is spent on clearing fly tipping by local authorities. That money could be better spent in other services like education and health too.
And it's because our countryside is so open and relatively isolated that fly tippers can thrive, but you're saying there's nowhere to hide anymore?
Very much so. With the GPS tracking system that we've got and the covert surveillance techniques that local authorities can employ now that we're helping them with, yeah, there's very few places now that if we believe fly tipping is going to go on that we couldn't target with our covert surveillance techniques.
Back to Wales now, and Simon Slade's company Monster Movers, not to be confused with monsters of a similar or the same name. Yeah. We've paid him to take away a load of household furniture, and he's promised either to sell it all on or take it to a licensed tip. Except we know he hasn't, because we've tracked his van. Who needs Tonto when you got one of these?
Yes, the trackers hidden inside the sofa and fridge have led us to this spooky country road less than a mile away from our stooge house. They were driven straight here and haven't budged for over 35 minutes, so what has Simon Slade been up to? As we move around the corner, we get our answer.
Stop. Does that look familiar? Yeah.
I'll say it's our sofa dumped by the side of the road. This is Gary Evans. He runs a council action group tasked with putting a stop to it.
I mean, the thing that a lot of people end up saying when we do stories about fly tipping is that councils seem to be making it more and more difficult and more expensive to get rid of things.
There are over 80 civic amenity sites in Wales, and the majority of those are free of charge, and they'll accept the kind of waste that you would create on a day-to-day basis.
However, unlike members of the public, traders like Simon Slade, who have a commercial vehicle, have to pay to dump other people's waste at the tip.
If you are employing somebody to get rid of large amount of waste, it is going to cost you money. Householders should know that if somebody comes to take their waste away for them, they should be a registered waste carrier. They should be taking it to a licensed facility.
If you don't ask the trader whether or not they have a licence and your fly-tipped rubbish is traced back to you, you could be held liable.
So if somebody comes to your home and says, I can get rid of that waste for you for 20 quid, you should be suspicious.